The story that we're kicking off with this morning has been, or is, the ban now on Maccabi Tel Aviv fans. It's hard to know where to start with this story. Obviously, the police have come to that conclusion. They've taken that decision seemingly with the community unadvised. But it's hard to know, given the condemnation across the political spectrum, how that chimes with Keir Starmer's promise to keep not just Jewish fans safe, but to stop anti-Semitism in all its forms.
I think across the sort of, if you like, political divide, there's been condemnation of this decision, whilst understanding the police have sought advice, presumably like they do on every situation for particularly public order. But I think the whole optics of this just don't help to challenge the anti-Semitism that we know is prevalent in our society today, as well as other forms of racism. And from what I say, Maccabi Tel Aviv, there was a match in Amsterdam against Ajax, in which there was some terrible violence and disruption there against these fans. But it's come to a sorrowful day when a football match, you know, Israelis, Jewish, let's talk about it, it's because they're Jewish, are threatening threats in this country.
I mean, we're talking about Aston Villa being Prince William's club. He may not well be there on this occasion, but he could well have been. How have we come to this point?
No, I know, it's quite shocking. I mean, there's one thing to say that, you know, you seek advice from the police, and there's a public safety issue, and understandably, you have to take that concern seriously and the safety of those fans that are travelling. But there's a wider issue, I think, and we were just talking about it earlier, with the Football Association and culture. And Caroline, you said it, you know, just in the green room. What happened to kick racism out of football? What happened to those endeavours? This is still the same thing. And progressing football and the way people spectate football into a safe environment also includes foreign fans travelling here and making sure that they are safe and that they feel welcome at a sporting event.
Well, can we look at what pressure they actually bow to? And this is really the problem. Before this even began, Ayub Khan, who is, as you know, the MP with where the ground is in his constituency, he started a petition before the ban, saying that the fixture should be called off. Now, you'll be aware of Ayub Khan. He used to be a Lib Dem MP. Amongst other things, well, he stopped being a Lib Dem MP. It's on the record, has questioned some of the Hamas atrocities. He attacked Emily Damari, the British Israeli hostage, online. On mutual agreement, he left the Lib Dems after refusing to take anti-Semitism training. Now, he's made a statement saying this was entirely decided on safety. But isn't the truth of it that the reason that this is not taking place is because the police cannot adequately protect Jewish people and Israelis who are going to support their team? And the reason for that is because they don't have the muscle to stand up to protesters. Now, the simple reality there is that not only are the police not resourced, but the worry is that there is no meaningful will to protect, preserve and defend Jewish people. And so I come back to the question, what does that say about Britain?
I really hope that that is not the case. And, you know, you've articulated it in a way that is incredibly powerful and persuasive. But I would like to believe that it's not because they're not willing to put the muscle forward. It is in their assessment. And, you know, it might be interesting to be able to have access to that assessment as to why that decision has been taken. But I do take your point that cultural agitation against nations, against people, is unacceptable. And one of the things that I have always said about cultural events and sporting events is that those are the forums in which we bring people together. And so talking about cultural boycotts, and you know, there's lots that occur for various different contexts, but talking about cultural boycotts actually undermines what we're seeing in the Middle East in terms of peace protests.
Cultural boycotts? I mean, it's really about the police. We've seen instances of, for example...
Sorry, I mean in terms of the MP sort of...
I hear you. Now, just to be clear, he ran to be a Lib Dem MP, and he actually was one, Ayub Khan, just to be clear. But Karen, it's, you know, there have been instances where Jewish people have showed up on the streets of London where there were Gaza protests, perfectly reasonably taking place, if not some of the slogans, which, to say the least, are anti-Jewish, racist and problematic to be kind, where the police have gone up to Jewish people and said, you're obviously Jewish and therefore you're causing and posing a risk to us. If there's any foundation that the reason this decision was made was because the police simply were not either willing, which is doubtful, or not prepared, or not capable of protecting fans, we really need to be worried about that, don't we?
I think we absolutely have to be worried about that because actually, you know, there should be no no-go areas for anybody in our society to conduct, you know, things that we do every day, going to work, enjoying a football match, going to the cinema, going to a concert, going to a festival. You know, these are the things that everybody should be entitled to, whether it's Jewish people going to this match from this country who are British citizens or whether it's fans coming from overseas. And you're describing some of the activities of this man and what he's put out on social media, it's almost, what are we going to do? We've got to deal with this because people put stuff out like that and we know it inflames certain people.
And he's almost MP.
Like...
He is an MP, he's part of our
There's a question about provocation in all this. Yeah. But what we're going to do is bow down and say to people, sorry, because of this, you're not able to go to do something, an everyday thing. And it's very worrying. And I do think football has got something to answer for this because there have been lots of incidents over years where UEFA and others have not stepped up. When we've had black players go to other countries and face racism, now we cannot have this happen where we have to bend down to a situation that is threatening our everyday activities that should be part of normal life. So there is a real question here.
No, just one of the things just on the part of the police's position in this, the incident you mentioned in Amsterdam, the match in Amsterdam that led to arrests on both sides. Yeah. Some Israeli fans arrested as well because the Ajax were accused of ripping down. You know, the Israeli fans were accused of ripping down Palestinian flags and then there was a scuffle between them. You know, for the police, a tension that is relevant to Jewish people all the time in our life, but it feels as though it may have been escalated by the situation in the Middle East. It's difficult for them to know how to manage that, isn't it, without the power to act?
Absolutely. And, you know, Caroline and I have both served in the Home Office. You know, we see what the police has to deal with on a daily basis and, you know, notwithstanding that it comes with contracting resources. However, the police can provide the assessment, they can provide the advice, and the decisions that are taken can be based on that advice, or they can be, look, we don't want to take the trouble, we don't want to take the risk. And that's where the politics comes in. Right. And that's where, if Keir Starmer is saying, as the Prime Minister, this is unacceptable, then what are the practical steps that you can take with that political intervention? Because those two things, the pragmatic and the practical, have to sit alongside everything that Caroline's just said, which is the ethical, which is it right? Is it right that people are scared of going out or not being able to live everyday life? And that's what the importance of politics.
And I would like to see... Look, I understand... I think Salma's absolutely right. We all know about the different pools on police time. But I would like to hear the police talk about things like, we will not tolerate anti-Semitism. We will not tolerate racism. You will be arrested if you come to an event and cause harm to others.
Well, and they might feel they can't do that because they haven't got the political will.
Say that.
Can we just have a look at what the Prime Minister said? So in his X post, he said, clearly criticising police, this is the wrong decision. We will not tolerate anti-Semitism on our streets. The role of the police is to ensure all football fans can enjoy the game without fear of violence or intimidation, just as we're all calling for, aren't we? But when he actually spoke about it, I wonder if people might feel it was quite empty.
And that's at CST, Salma, just to be clear that people understand who they are, the Community Security Trust. That is a private, de facto, police and security service paid for by the Jewish community in order to protect not just every single synagogue in this country, but every school child that goes to school, because they are the subject of potential attack every single day. It's an act of courage to take your kid to a Jewish school.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's the situation in 2025.
But this is the thing where it's... Look, I never, even as a Conservative, I never come on and just blindly criticise any political party because I know that these jobs are hard. But I think that is difficult because he's gone to the CST, which is a private organisation. It does receive some government money, but it is largely privately funded, to talk about security, because we can all take those steps. We can all say anti-Semitism is abhorrent, but what are the practical steps that he is able to take? Now, if he is saying, rightly, that this is the wrong decision, he can't change the police advice. The police advice is just fact. So what can we actually do? Is there different protection? Is there better security? Is there a different kind of patrol system or check system that you can put in around that stadium and around that match? I think we have to get practical about what it actually means to say that we are going to protect Jewish people or visiting fans coming into the country.
Yeah, I mean, the question is, what can he do? But, you know, before you even get there, the real worry, as has often been the case, is that things are shut down, political things you don't like, views you don't like, on the pretext of safety. And we've seen that across the political aisle. And that's genuinely the worry here, that the police not only don't have the will, let's say, but they've bowed down to political pressure from a movement which has effectively stopped Israeli fans coming to support their team. And as you said, Caroline, again, we ask that question. What does it say about the will, the resources and the willingness of police to preserve, protect and defend fans?
Yeah, and I think probably for a lot of British people, what you described as the reality for families living in communities, Jewish schools, synagogues, this issue of having protection that they are paying for is a feature of everyday life. I think a lot of people in Britain weren't aware of that.
Yeah.
Were not aware of that until the terrible incident a fortnight ago and the attack on the synagogue there. Actually, there is I think partly of this is people will be absolutely shocked. I think most British people think the idea that a section of our community has to pay for security to go into schools is abhorrent. So we need to... So when I was Home Office Minister, and again in action, I'm not saying, you know, there isn't a sort of, you know, a simple idea to sort this, but one of the things I'd want to know is just how much, in the face of the anti-Semitism we know that has gone up in our society, how much the government, Shamar Mahmood, the Prime Minister and others are working with the Home Office, with all the police forces, because that's another thing, is we've got 40-odd police forces who may all take a slightly different approach. Yeah. Right. How much they are setting up a task force to look at this so we can get some strategic evaluation about how we're going to deal with both the threats before a public order event, but also how, for the medium and long term, we're going to stop this. You
know, after what happened in Manchester, you know, that I put out a tweet, and it wasn't just a tragic day. It felt, you know, very much like an important moment, and one where, as you'll be aware, lots of Jewish people are asking whether or not there is a future for them in this country. That's a real conversation that takes place in private. Now, obviously, I'm here, proudly Jewish, and I feel confident and I will remain hopeful about the future of this nation. But at the same time, when it seems as if the authorities who are there to protect you, that are there as part of community policing, are not able to, that does enduring violence to the sense of safety to our community that we experience every single day. And that's something which has to be very seriously considered by the police in the course of making this decision. Certainly in terms of what he can do, as you say, he can't, Sir Keir Starmer can't override the police view, but he could put pressure by way of the Home Secretary for their decision to be made public, so we know exactly what their decision was and the basis of it. He could also, of course, refer it to the Equalities and Human Rights Commission to determine whether or not there's been discrimination here. And again, we await to see it. But the critical thing is there has to be a demonstrable will, and that has to be visible to the Jewish community and other minorities, because that's what Britain is at its best. It protects those who simply don't have the power and the voice to defend themselves, most especially a tiny Jewish community, which is about 250,000 in the nation, less than 0.5%. Worth reflecting on that when you look at some of the activities and the things that are said online.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, Rob, you put it so well, and it's awful, isn't it? It's awful for all communities that are feeling like this, and this is the one we're discussing at the moment. Should we talk about security of a different sort now? The ongoing ramblings and ruminations, and I think some confusion as well, about the Chinese spy scandal. Now, the gut feeling I think people have is that something is amiss, and that I think many people assume that China, or at certain elements of China, not all Chinese people, are spying on our way of life, as they probably do many other nations. But there feels like there's something rotten here, and the use of the language that we've heard about senior members of, security service about how great the threat is feels frightening.
I think that this is finally an issue that's coming into the public discourse in a way that it hadn't previously. So both of us, as I say, we've been in the Home Office at different times. This has definitely been on my radar for the last decade. I think if you look at any think tanks in Westminster, the one that I'm part of as well, Policy Exchange, they've talked about the Chinese threat. The question here, the weird balancing act that's going on in politics is we are still a global economy, China is still growing, and this government is attempting, as my government did, the one that I worked in, is trying to reset and have good relationships with China as a consequence of growth. How do you balance that against the fact that you know that there have been hostile activities by the same state either on your soil or in other places where you have interests? And finding the language to be able to marry those two realities up is the challenge that we're seeing today. But for a lot of people who are going to be sat at home going, well, hold on a minute, you're talking about somebody, a state actor that has actively engaged Brits to potentially, spy, how does that equate? And the answer is, it's really hard to give you a definitive answer to that.
I agree. I agree, but I also think, in some ways, it's not that hard. We actually deal with countries all around the world for whom we have disagreements with over their human rights record or what have you, but we still have to engage. And sometimes it's the nature of politics, is sometimes we have to engage with some dangerous people in the interests of our country and to do the right thing. We can't just walk away. And China is one of those countries where we should acknowledge, and it's been said very clearly by Sir Ken McCallum, the head of MI5, that pretty much on a very regular basis, I think he said even in the last week, they are disrupting activities by China to interfere in our country. What is confusing here is this argument over a phrase around the national interest or the national security threat as a reason to drop the prosecution. And I think I don't understand, and I've tried to read through a lot of different comments on this, but when you've got directors of the prosecution service and others also questioning Stephen Parkinson's analysis for his organisation to drop the case, there is something very wrong here.
Well, One of the great things about having Rob is we have a brilliant barrister that's helped me unravel it.
I know, I think back in the day when he was a solicitor...
law and language,
he used to instruct me, Stephen Parkinson, a couple of times. He's a good guy, there's no doubt about it, decent, and would have come to the view based on the law. Now, the difficulty here is that these two men who are accused of spying are being prosecuted under the old Act, right? The 1911 statute. And what that required was the government to say, if you're spying, the country that you're giving secrets to have to be a hostile threat, very specific words, which means that the person giving the statement on behalf of the government has to say, this country, China, is a hostile threat. There were 3 statements given by the Deputy National Security Advisor. Statement 1, under Conservative government, because this has been going on for some time, did not use that language. Then Statement 2, same thing, didn't say hostile threat. And the 3rd didn't say hostile threat. Now, that Deputy National Security Advisor, though I don't know, I can strongly suspect, would have been told that this is the language that's required in order for a successful case to be brought, because that's what the statute demands. You can't prosecute somebody unless it says hostile threat. It is odd to me, and I can only put it to that level, let's say, that that person, the Deputy National Security Advisor, when making that statement, did not confer with various people in the Home Office, and that people in the Home Office, potentially the Prime Minister, though I emphasise he denies it entirely, as to why that phrase wasn't used, and that they were very legally aware that without that phrase, this prosecution could not go ahead. These conversations would have taken place. We need that language for this to succeed. And the worry, just to be clear, is the reason that that language wasn't used is because we have a trading relationship with China. And so what we've done is decided to not worry about the spying, but instead worry a good deal more, regardless of their human rights records and the fact that they are potentially stealing our state secrets, as we've been told every single day, and they're corporate and they're serious and significant. Instead of doing that, we've decided that what matters more is trade than it does protecting our national interest.
Well, I think that's an assumption that they've put trade above our security. But what will help with all this is transparency. And there are, I think, at least 2 investigations going to be happening in the House of Commons. On the Intelligence Security Committee, which I used to be a member of, we'll be looking at all the intelligence information because they're able to do that. But there are other inquiries as well. And I think transparency is important to this. The only thing I would say, Rob, in this is that, other lawyers are also saying, and I've not got anything personal against Stephen Parkinson, but other lawyers are saying, well, actually, there was enough there to show that there was meddling at the minor level, but also strategic interventions to put people close to MPs, close to information that they could gain. And, of course, these are allegations. The 2 men involved have said they weren't guilty of that. There was enough there in different ways to at least put this before a jury. It's always difficult sometimes, these things, but I find it, and I might be wrong, hard to believe that we sort of seem to be dancing on the head of a pin about 4 words when actually there's other evidence to show that there clearly was malintent to put these people along in MPs' offices or close to MPs to try and extract information. And, it will all come out. But I think, this is, if there's something wrong with the law that's gone through...
Let's hope it does, but I would say on just... I've got to say, because I haven't had a chance, but on traitors and treachery in general, I'm afraid to say I've been watching and I don't know what happens. But, blimmin' heck, I am flabbergasted by your behaviour. What do you make of our Gate as a spy, a potential spy?
I've basically turned her into, like, my own personal meme at my house.
I honestly, the other week I thought you were going to be out.
I know. Well, I'm up for murder.
And now you're facing that...
I know. Always in jeopardy and a little bit soggy by the
You would make such a great spy because you have not told anybody about...
I'm being very good.
It's very, very
My
nice.
lips are sealed despite constantly moving and gabbing away. Anyway. Lovely to chat to you.